In the fall of 1970, I started teaching at the Watson Chapel Public Schools at the high school, which is located on the outskirts of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. I finished college that spring and I had my degree in teacher education, even though I knew when I finished college that seminary was in my future. I did want to take a year or two break from my studies to gain some catch up on some financial resources that I needed, but also a little bit of break for school, for after going to school since I could remember, I thought it was time to take a little break. Now, when I went to Watson Chapel High School, it had a reputation of being a very, very good school system, but it was facing something that most schools had faced there in the South, and that was called the integration of school system. The Watson Chapel School had two kind of separate school systems within its district, the Watson Chapel and then the Coleman, one for the white students and one for the black. Well, I had gone through the integration of college. When I was in college, we had gone fully integrated, and I had made friends with many students that maybe I would not have made friends with in the past. One in particular was Odell Davis. He had graduated from a school close to me that we became very good friends, and to our amazement, we ran into each other many times in my hometown of Warren. But there, because Watson Chapel was still in court fights over the integration of schools, at the beginning of school, when our superintendent met with us, he gave us this instruction. He said, if you have been in education for many years, this is going to be the toughest year you've ever had. And if you're new to education, don't worry, this will be the toughest year you will ever have. Not really great words of encouragement for a young man just starting out or others. And I will have to agree, even though my education experience was 3 years, he was correct. Actually, before I would leave the school, he would be dead from a heart attack from the stress. The issue remained before us all of that fall, as there seemed to be court case after court case with a school board that did not want to think it should obey the laws of the land and thought it could fight on its own. And finally, one Thursday afternoon on February the 5th of 1971, the federal judge that was hearing the case had enough and put out an order that simply said, you will open next Thursday morning, February the 11th, as a fully integrated school system. He told this to the Board of Education. He said, if you don't want to see it through, I am encouraging all of the administrators that they are to obey my orders first. So on Thursday morning, February the 11th, 6 days after this decree, we opened school as a fully integrated school system. Getting to school that morning, we had to pass roadblocks that were set up by police and the sheriff and 50 federal marshals who had been sent there. But we went to school, and there, as the tardy bell rang for the beginning of school, we saw a large number of the white students walk out. We had been assigned, of course, different classes, some of us different classrooms. Our faculties had been changed, and some of us had many new faculty. Some of us were able to stay. Others went to the Coleman School, and many of the Coleman staff came to join us. But there, as we saw them walk out with parents and others cheering them on, it was a low day for us. I remember going home that evening and turning on the news, and there on the national news was the story of Watson Chapel and the students walking out. It was a night I wanted to stay in by myself and be with no one. Friday we would return to school, and a few of the white students slowly started coming back. It was a rough few weeks there for us. For there we would see students come back, and we had to adjust to many different things, but yet we knew that if we kept going and put what was our mission was to teach students to give them the education, and we were all committed to that, both those that had come from Coleman and those that were there. We worked together, we joined hands, we did what we knew we had to do. Even though we knew families in our communities were split, families that had been friends for many years had become angry with each other. Private schools were started. Churches were split over the issue, and families and churches argued. Yes, we faced times of graffiti. We faced times of kind of a harassment, like the time we read in the paper that the school board voted not to pay the employees, but we got our checks anyway. We learned to make fun of it, but yet we learned what it meant. And we learned that what it meant was that as long as we kept to our mission, with all that was going on round about us, we still had a mission, and that we would begin to see things turn and change and turn around. Soon this school would become once again one of the best schools in Arkansas. Yes, it was a difficult year or two there. And I remember speaking with my principal as I was getting ready to resign to go to seminary after year 3. He said, well, you know, we're just back to normal now. We're just a normal school. All of the drama seems to have faded away, and we will go about our task. I thought of that story today, and as I remembered that, when I read today's gospel, here Jesus is going with his disciples, and he asked them a question. Who do people say that I am? And of course we hear them say John the Baptist, Elijah, one of the prophets, great men that they all revered and respected. But then he asked them a question that each one of them had to answer for themselves, and each one of us must answer for ourselves. Who do you say that I am? Who do we say that Jesus Christ is? Not just with words, but with our being. And it was Peter who said, you are the Messiah, you are the Christ, you are the one that we have given up everything to come and follow because we believe in you. And of course he tells Peter how wonderful that is. That was a great calling for him to answer and a great understanding for him to have. And then he begins to talk about something that even brings terror on Peter's face. He says, the Son of Man must go and suffer and die and rise again. And then Peter begins to rebuke him. No, not as long as I am with you, Christ. That is not going to happen. And notice what he says to Peter, get behind me, Peter. If you want just an easy road, you're following the wrong Messiah. If you want just an easy path, you will not know the great joys that come from all of this. Jesus knew that his ministry led through many difficult times that would bring him strength and hope. Remember, he begins his ministry by going to the wilderness for 40 days without food or water. And there he gains the strength and understands his purpose for what his ministry is to be. So if we want to follow the resurrected Christ, if we want to be the church that celebrates the resurrection, if we want to be the church here at Central that brings hope, we must look to and understand that life is not always easy, even for the church of Jesus Christ. And certainly for you here at Central, the past few years have been very, very difficult. Yes, you faced many things, the death of a beloved pastor, through some other conflict that you have come. But now we begin to understand that things can go forward. That the hardships are not the end, that it has strengthened us. I don't like to say that God puts us through all of this, but it is through all of that that we learn to trust in God. that we as a church have developed new friendships, new community together, a new understanding and a new commitment to our ministry and mission of carrying the gospel to all of the world, and especially to here in Enid. When I look at this church, I think, what would Enid be like without Central Christian Church? Have you ever stopped to think of that? What would be missing so greatly in our community without this church here to care for it? We feed 80 or so each Sunday evening at our welcome table. A meal that we serve with others in our community, but a meal that all say we are treated with more dignity here than everywhere else. People for whom very little dignity is given. Just before school started, we handed out hundreds of pair of shoes by working through Foster Feet, which is housed here. It could not have happened without this church being a part of it. And we continue almost daily to give shoes to school children. And when it gets cold, we will have coats. And we support 4 schools in Peru that we have built and support because someone from here said they need those very basic needs of education to go forward. And so we responded. We have been responding to the Congo for years, and even this week I got a text from someone that I did not recognize at first. Have never met this person, but I knew her name. But she said, a few years ago I was visiting Central Christian Church with my husband, who was the interim regional minister here in Oklahoma. And I noticed the great items you had from the Congo about the Congo here in that church and the work of Edna Pohl. And I was talking today with a professor from Central Theological Seminary who is on sabbatical and is writing about the disciples' work in the Congo. And I shared with him the information from this church, and I wanted to know if it would be okay if he made a visit to the church. I explained to her that I would soon be leaving, but I was sure, and also explained our recognition of the Congo with a long, long history of that, including current members who were missionaries to the Congo, and how they were still able to share the story. A story and how we still support the work there in various ways, and how we support work in the Dominican Republic through Caminati, through the leadership of Don Johnson. And even as Kathy mentioned in prayer today, Harry Hammonds, one of our members, is gone with the Red Cross to serve in the hurricane relief. And other instances, day by day by day, I know of how this church reaches out. Seldom a week go by that I do not hear of some Sunday school class or some CWF or guild group or just some individual on their own are reaching out and are sharing with those in need and sharing God's love. Yes, we are a church that has a great history here that we will soon celebrate, but we are also a church that meets the needs today and will continue to share forth the good news in the days and weeks ahead. We may be a little different. We may be a little changed, just as I noticed the Watson Chapel schools were never back what they were, but what they became was something even greater as they reached out, not only with their academic, but also their extracurricular activities. Yes, it is sometimes through that pain and that struggles that we are made stronger. And we come to realize and recognize where our true hope comes from Jesus Christ our Lord, and that we are resurrection people. We are people that believe in the good news that God is still at work restoring His creation and His world and His church back to His will. So this will be my last sermon before you as your interim pastor. Kathy gets the last word next week, so she can do her own thing. But I wanted to say, yes, you have a lot to be hopeful for. You have come through much trial and tribulation, but join together. Come together and seek the working of God, who is all-powerful and all-caring and all-loving. Come forward with your new minister when he or she is called to come and lead you. But join together even in this time and discover God has a ministry and a mission that is so greatly needed, not only here in Enon, but around the world, because of the redeemed folks here at Central Christian Church. Go forth. Be God's people. Allow God's grace to work at you, and God will be with you now and forevermore. Thanks be to God for his enduring and unbounding grace that never, never leaves you alone. Amen.